On the day of my first love's birthday, the transfer student deliberately shattered the gift that I had spent a month piecing together. She sobbed and apologized to me. But Zephyr immediately shielded her behind him and coaxed her gently in a tender voice. "Don't be afraid. It's just a worthless little thing." I remained silent, turned around and left. However, on my way back, I encountered robbers. In a panic, I instinctively called Zephyr and cried out for help. But he hung up the phone impatiently. "Serena, I'm just your neighbor. If you have something, call the police. Don't bother me." The next day, my body was found on the deserted street. I was half naked and covered in bruises. When I opened my eyes again, I was back on the day of Zephyr's birthday. Smash, the 2-meter tall Lego model was shattered into pieces. Zephyr's eyes widened in horror, and 2 tears welled up. I'm sorry, Serena. I didn't mean to." I stared blankly at Zephyr, whose eyes were as red as a rabbit's. Was I reborn? Seeing me remain silent, Zephyr's face darkened. He grabbed Zephyr and pulled her to his side. He coaxed her gently in a tender voice. "Don't be afraid. It's just a worthless little thing. It's okay if it's broken." Upon hearing this, everyone in the room looked at me. Everyone knew that I had spent a whole month preparing a birthday gift for Zephyr. I even pulled an all-nighter in the last few days. But now he said it was just a worthless little thing. Someone couldn't stand it anymore. "What are you saying, Zephyr? You're picking on the gift that our little princess Serena made with her own hands." "That's right. The fatty only got a happy birthday from Serena on his last birthday. Don't be ungrateful. It was just a joke." But it made Zephyr's face turn cold. He looked at me with a sneer and scoffed. "Did I ask her to make it for me?" The atmosphere suddenly froze. No one expected him to turn on me so suddenly. After all, the Kai and Lu families were old friends. And Zephyr and I were childhood sweethearts. In our circle, it was almost an open secret that I liked Zephyr. And regarding my feelings, Zephyr neither accepted nor rejected them. He tacitly allowed me to follow him around. Until Zephyr suddenly appeared. Everyone was extremely embarrassed. Except for Zephyr, who showed a triumphant smile in the corner. Without the slightest hesitation, I slapped her across the face. Zephyr immediately grabbed my wrist and squinted his eyes dangerously. "Serena, who gave you the guts to touch my person?" I stared fixedly at Zephyr. The face that had once fascinated me was now full of anger. Seeing me staring at him in a daze, Zephyr's anger subsided a little. He raised his eyebrows in a playful manner. But the next second, I disgustedly shook off his hand. Zephyr's face instantly turned dark. "Serena, what was that look in your eyes just now? How dare you despise me?" "Yes." I didn't hesitate and said coldly. "Zephyr deliberately broke my Lego. I gave her a slap in return. We're even." Zephyr ignored the slap and instead gritted his teeth and asked, "Who are you throwing a tantrum at? I'll give you another chance. Answer my question again." Looking at Zephyr's face pale with anger, I suddenly found it ridiculous. Is he allowed to despise me? But I'm not allowed to despise him? I didn't say anything. Instead, I answered him with my actions. I took out a tissue, wiped my hand, and then threw it away. Then I turned around and left. The moment I went out, there was a loud crash of tables and chairs being kicked over and Zephyr's exclamation behind me. I didn't leave the hotel immediately. Instead, I called my best friend and asked her to pick me up. By the time Sylvia and the driver arrived, I had already called the police. This time, those scumbags won't be able to harm anyone else. After dealing with this matter, the stone in my heart finally dropped. I fell asleep in a daze. When I woke up, the car had stopped outside a clubhouse. I originally wanted to go home. But Sylvia hooked her arm around mine and coquettously said, Come on. Come on. Today is Orion's birthday. And Phoenix must be there too." It took me so much effort to get into their inner circle. "You can't not help me, Orion?" I paused. In my previous life, the first person to find my body was Orion. I floated in the air and watched as he knelt in front of me with red eyes, his hands trembling as he wrapped me in his coat. Then he went crazy and almost beat Zephyr to death when he heard the news. Come to think of it, Orion and I have known each other since we were children. However, Zephyr hated him. So I didn't have much interaction with him. I just didn't expect that the person who would finally collect my body would be him. Since I'm already here, it doesn't seem like a hassle to say happy birthday. There were a lot of people in the private room. Sylvia was already nowhere to be seen. I silently cursed myself for being too impulsive. Just as I was about to leave, Orion suddenly appeared. His chest was heaving slightly. Because he was so close. His breath almost hit my face. I greeted him awkwardly. Hi. Happy birthday. Orion nodded calmly. I was just about to find a topic to make the atmosphere less awkward. Orion suddenly said, "Wait for me. It'll be quick." When he came back, he was already holding a big cake in his hand. Orion's throat moved. "You came to wish me a happy birthday. So I'll treat you to cake." I was a bit stunned. "For me? The whole thing? I don't need the cake. I didn't prepare a gift for you." Orion's eyes darkened. And he actually looked a little disappointed. I wished I could slap myself right away. Then, let out a low sigh. "I'll make it up to you later?" Orion immediately looked up at me. His gaze falling on the Lego rabbit keychain on my bat. He pursed his lips and said, "Can that be given to me as a gift?" Since the birthday boy had already asked, there was no reason for me to refuse. Anyway, I made it myself. And it wasn't worth much. I simply unhooked the keychain and handed it to him. Then took the cake and found an excuse to slip away. When I got home, there were more than a dozen missed calls on my phone. They were all from Zephyr. I guess it was too noisy in the private room just now. And I didn't hear it. But even if I had heard it, I didn't want to answer. I directly blocked his number. The next day at school, as soon as I sat down, I felt a cold gaze on my back. I knew it was Zephyr. Yesterday, I not only embarrassed him but also blocked his phone number. He must be furious. But I didn't want to pay attention to him. After a while, Zephyr also came. She consciously walked up to Zephyr and smiled as she took out breakfast from her bag and handed it to Zephyr. Zephyr had always disliked these roadside snacks. But he paused and glanced at me. He took the things and deliberately said loudly, "I told you not to get up early to bring me breakfast. I'll feel sorry if you don't sleep well." I knew he was waiting for me to stop Zephyr as I used to. Zephyr had also brought breakfast for Zephyr before. But Zephyr had a delicate stomach. I was worried that his stomach couldn't take it. So I immediately spoke out to stop it. But it made Zephyr feel at a loss and her eyes turned red with grievance. That was the first time Zephyr lost his temper with me. He had a dark face and asked me to apologize to Zephyr. I gritted my teeth and refused to speak, but he threatened to break off our friendship. In the end, I had no choice. I could only bite my lip tightly and, with tears in my eyes, apologize to Zephyr in front of everyone. Now that I think about it, even if I hadn't stopped him, Zephyr might not have eaten those things either. It was just that with me as the one to take the lead. Of course, he wouldn't take the initiative to reject Zephyr and break her heart. From beginning to end, I was just a part of their game. It's really disgusting to think about it. Immediately, there were whistles and catcalls from the boys around. A WW. Zephyr is so virtuous. She even remembered to bring breakfast for Zephyr. Zephyr. I haven't eaten either. Can you spare me a fried dough stick? Thanks to their teasing, Zephyr's face finally wasn't so gloomy anymore. He protected the blushing Zephyr behind him and told them to get lost with a smile. From beginning to end, I didn't say a word. Even if he died from eating here today, I would just clap my hands and cheer. And Zephyr didn't look at me again either. Until the PE class in the afternoon. I was doing my test paper when Sylvia rushed over and dragged me to the playground. "Hurry up, Zephyr and Orion are fighting." When I arrived, I indeed saw the familiar scene. But this time, Zephyr wasn't in such a bad state. The two of them were full of hostility and were grappling with each other. There was a crowd of onlookers. But no one dared to stop them. Zephyr stood anxiously by the side, looking as if she was about to cry. I had witnessed Zephyr's fighting skills. Afraid that Orion would be at a disadvantage, I immediately rushed forward to separate them. When he saw me, Zephyr reluctantly withdrew his fist. He pointed at the keychain on Orion's phone. His forehead veins bulging as he roared. Serena. Right in front of me. How dare you protect him? I'm asking you why the gift you gave me is on Orion? I lowered my arms and replied infuriately, this is my thing. I remember you disliked it and didn't accept it at that time. Zephyr's face changed abruptly. Come to think of it. It wasn't a big deal. It was just that Zephyr was born in the year of the rabbit. On Christmas Day. I pieced together a little rabbit and happily planned to give it to him. But he disdainfully threw it aside and said it was childish. Then he turned around and put on the little dog bracelet that Zephyr had woven for him. I was sad for a long time afterward. Now that I think about it, it wasn't that the little rabbit wasn't cute, nor was the little dog too cute. It was just that in Zephyr's heart, I wasn't as good as Zephyr. So even the little rabbit I gave him was disliked. Zephyr's chest heaved violently. And he angrily shouted at me, so what? Did I say anything wrong? This kind of worthless thing is just childish. Is there anything wrong with me not wanting to accept it? No problem. So I gave it to someone else. There would always be someone who appreciated the little rabbit that he didn't like. I didn't want to entangle with Zephyr anymore. I turned around and said softly to Orion, let's go. There was finally a bit of warmth on Orion's stern face. He nodded. Just as we were about to leave, he suddenly stopped. He held the keychain in his hand with tenderness in his eyes, and said in an ambiguous tone, thank you, Zephyr, for giving up your beloved item. This is the best birthday gift I've ever received. And I will cherish it. It was just a keychain. What was there to cherish? I helplessly turned around and was about to leave. But I was grabbed by the arm by the crazy Zephyr. His eyes were bloodshot. And he squeezed out a sentence through his teeth, Serena. You dare to leave with him today, and see what happens. I was really disgusted by Zephyr's attempt to control me. It was as if he had to decide every move I made. In Zephyr's stunned expression, I disgustedly shook off his hand. Why don't I dare? Zephyr looked at me in disbelief. He stood there as if rooted to the spot and didn't move for a long time. From that day on, Zephyr drew a clear line with me. I was naturally happy about it. It was just that I saw him and Zephyr showing their affection more often at school. One day, as soon as I came out of the office, I saw Zephyr and Zephyr skipping class and standing at the corner of the toilet. Zephyr leaned lazily against the window. Surrounded by a cloud of smoke, Zephyr was snuggling up to him. Seeing that I was about to walk away, Zephyr suddenly called my name affectionately from behind. Serena, where are you going? Zephyr's body froze. And he turned his head away with a cold smile. Unwilling to look at me, I frowned. Don't call me Serena. I'm not that familiar with you. It's really unlucky to say so. Zephyr is a poor student who is sponsored. When she first transferred to the class, almost no one was willing to talk to her. In this noble school that values family background, she was undoubtedly isolated. In the end, I couldn't stand it anymore and took her under my wing. Unexpectedly, hadn't so felt way Zephyr. Instead, she replaced me and became very close to Zephyr. Zephyr was stunned, and tears quickly welled up in her eyes. She quickly bowed to me and stammered an apology. Why, I'm sorry, Serena. After saying that, she looked at Zephyr helplessly, her eyes full of fear. Zephyr, did I make Serena angry again? Seeing this, Zephyr immediately stood up straight and protected her behind him, frowning tightly. Serena, have you had enough? Are you addicted to bullying Zephyr? What a neuropathy. Is his Zephyr mentally retarded? She's so easily bullied and doesn't even know how to fight back. If you're afraid of her being bullied, you might as well tie a rope around her neck to protect her. Zephyr was so angry with me that his face turned livid. The next second, in front of me, he put his arm around Zephyr's waist and kissed her lips heavily. The smacking sound of their lips and tongues intertwining came. Zephyr was kissed until her face turned red, and she couldn't help but let out a soft moan. However, Zephyr stared at me intently. There was full of provocation in her eyes. Me? Amazing. How can he even kiss her? I can't even imagine how stinky Zephyr's mouth is after just smoking a cigarette. I frowned in disgust and walked past these two love-crazed people. I completely didn't see the flash of joy in Zephyr's eyes. A few days later was Zephyr's father's birthday party. I didn't want to attend at first, but my friend still dragged me there. After a while, she asked me what was going on between me and Orion. I answered honestly. Then what's the problem between you and Zephyr? Are you really planning to never have anything to do with each other again? Everyone in the circle has witnessed how I have treated Zephyr over the years. No one believes that I have really given up on him. Seeing that I didn't say anything, my friend raised her glass and sneered. I've never even looked at that Zephyr directly. She's a hypocritical lotus flower who pretends to be innocent. The next second, there were footsteps behind us. My friend didn't continue and said to the person who came, I brought Serena to you. Zephyr. Don't bully her away again. Zephyr lazily responded. When I saw my friend walking away, I also planned to leave. I don't blame her for helping Zephyr. After all, we grew up together, and she doesn't know the ins and outs of the matter. But I really don't want to have any more contact with Zephyr. I came today because I knew he would go to accompany Zephyr to celebrate her grandmother's birthday. Who would have thought he didn't leave? Zephyr took me to a secluded place regardless of my struggle and said lazily, Why are you running? Are you really that afraid of seeing me? Well, sometimes I really want to call the police. Isn't my disgust obvious enough? Are you crazy? If you like daydreaming so much, why don't you write a story? Zephyr sneered, and a look of contempt flashed in his eyes. Come on, Serena. I know you used to like me and couldn't stand me being with Zephyr. But she's different from you. She's very clean. Don't use your dirty tricks on her. I'm really speechless. You also said it was in the past. Now I sincerely wish you and Zephyr a long and happy marriage. Locked together forever. Seeing that I didn't seem to be just being petty, Zephyr's expression changed. He put away his casual look. Serena. Some acts are going too far if you keep acting them out. Do I look like I'm acting? You can't possibly not know about me and Orion. Right? Sorry. Orion. Anyway, heading till Philwind session. You've already been hated by Zephyr. So one more mess doesn't matter. Zephyr's face darkened, and he said angrily, Serena. I said you're overcating. If you don't like me, why did you leave in a gloomy way when you saw me kissing Zephyr at school that day? I'm really annoyed by his pestering. Was I leaving in a gloomy way? I was clearly disgusted away by him. Okay? You're overthinking. I already have someone I like. I don't care at all what you do. After saying that, I turned around and left. I don't know which words irritated him, but Zephyr suddenly pressed me against the wall. There was madness in his eyes, and he bent down to kiss me like a madman. I don't believe it. You've liked me for so many years. How could you not care about me kissing someone else? I suppressed my nausea and desperately pushed his head away. Just as he was about to touch my lips, a trembling and shrill female voice sounded. Zephyr. What are you two doing? Zephyr's body froze. I pushed him away and wiped my mouth in disgust. So disgusting. Zephyr's face was covered in tears, and she was crying as if her heart was broken. Zephyr's eyes were heavy, but there was no trace of panic. I turned around and wanted to leave, but Zephyr stopped me and questioned me with a sobbing voice. Serena. Why did you kiss my boyfriend? Don't you know he has a girlfriend? Did you ask me to come here just to let me see this? Zephyr suddenly turned around, his eyes sharp. Did you bring Zephyr here? Damn it. Who the hell wants to see that bitch Zephyr? I'm so annoyed at being wrongly accused one after another. Go to hell. You two idiots. Get lost and don't bother me. However, Zephyr firmly believed that I had set the trap. He grabbed my hand tightly and sternly forced me to explain clearly to Zephyr and apologize. I directly slapped him, knocking his head to the side. The scene suddenly fell silent. This is my explanation. Are you satisfied? In the end, Zephyr was slapped a few times by his father and locked up. Zephyr was also slapped a few times by her friends, who heard the news and left with a swollen face like a pig. After going home, I decided to transfer classes. It's a crucial period now, and the school has good teaching resources. I don't want to transfer schools. Of course. I also don't want to see those two distinct faces again. The next day, I arrived at the class very late. Zephyr sat there with a gloomy face, and there were bruises at the corners of his mouth. It seemed that he was beaten quite badly. Zephyr was gently applying medicine to him with a look of concern. When they saw me packing my things, some people lowered their heads and whispered. I ignored them and planned to leave after finishing packing. A girl suddenly stood up and said loudly, "Serena, are you just leaving like this? Don't you think you still owe Zephyr an apology?" Everyone looked at me in unison, all with the expression of watching the drama. Zephyr tugged at the corner of her clothes, and tears fell down. "Jocelyn, I'm okay. Stop talking. Serena is just jealous that I stole Zephyr away. That's why she's like this." Jocelyn was frustrated at someone's failure to live up to expectations. "You're too kind. That's why you're being bullied. So what if someone has money at home? Does having money mean they can steal someone else's boyfriend? Shameless mistress." I threw the book hard at her face. "What evidence do you have to call me a mistress?" Zephyr suddenly said in a cold voice, "I'm the evidence." He looked at me and ordered, "Apologize to Zephyr, and this matter will be over." A flash of joy appeared in Zephyr's eyes, but she pursed her lips and deliberately said, "Forget it. Zephyr, don't make Serena angry for my sake. As long as you're happy, it doesn't matter if I suffer a little grievance. I believe in you." Looking at the hypocritical Zephyr, I sneered, "You're really good at pretending. Do you have any evidence that I called you to the banquet? Did I call you? Send you a text message? Or send you a WeChat message? There must be some record, right? Since the last time I cursed, the frequency of my using swear words has risen sharply. But it doesn't matter. After saying the swear words, my heart feels clean." Zephyr's face froze, and he smiled bitterly and shook his head. "Serena, I don't intend to pursue this matter anymore. Why do you have to be so aggressive?" I sneered. "If you can't produce the evidence, it means there's no evidence? Without evidence, you're just spreading rumors." Jocelyn got angry. "Zephyr, throw the screenshot in her face and see how she can still quibble." Everyone eagerly looked at Zephyr. Only she had a cold face. "Since you wanted to lure me there, how could you leave me with evidence?" "Someone else told me." I sneered. "Then tell me, who did I ask? And at what time and place did I send you the message? Let him confront me face to face." Zephyr's face suddenly became a bit ugly. Jocelyn was still desperately urging her to call someone out for a confrontation, but she stammered and couldn't say anything. Smart people had already seen the clue. Fools were still waiting for the evidence. Zephyr understood and said angrily with a livid face, "Enough. This matter ends here." I shrugged inferiorly. Anyway, having fulfilled Ryan's session, it's not the first time he's taken Zephyr's side. I don't care at all. However, Zephyr didn't think so. She bit her lip in embarrassment and asked me angrily, "Even if you didn't call me there, did I say anything wrong when I said you took the initiative to kiss Zephyr?" It was obvious to everyone that Zephyr had forced me that day, but she was twisting the truth. I was just about to speak when a cold male voice suddenly came from the door. "Instead of questioning others here, you might as well ask your good boyfriend what he did." Orion stood at the door, his eyes heavy. "Why are you here?" He took the things from my hand and said softly, "Sylvia saw that you hadn't gone over for a long time, so she asked me to come and take a look." Zephyr's eyes were like knives as they flew towards Orion. "How dare you show up in front of me?" Orion protected me behind him and raised his eyebrows with a smile. "I don't have time to fight with you today. I'm here to take Serena to her new class. You really know how to provoke him." Sure enough, Zephyr looked at me with a distorted expression. "You're leaving?" I said expressionlessly. "It has nothing to do with you. Take care of your girlfriend and don't let her bite people randomly." Before leaving, Orion said to Zephyr, "If Zephyr still wants to continue twisting the truth, I don't mind projecting the surveillance video at that time onto all the classes. But then, the person who will be embarrassed will probably be you." Zephyr's face suddenly turned pale. After going to the new class, I adapted very well. Unlike Class 3, the atmosphere in Class 1 is much more normal. And there are two familiar people: Sylvia and Orion. Here. That's right. Orion has now been classified as a familiar person by me. After getting in touch with him, I found that he is much better than Zephyr. He is very polite and doesn't have blind confidence. Most importantly, he is also a super top student. being with him. My grades have improved a lot. One day, the school organized a field trip for collecting folk songs and local customs. In fact, it was just taking these young masters and ladies out for a trip. My grades in the recent mock exams have been good, so I went with Orion. While waiting for the bus, heading for Orion Psi, Sylvia was as usual sticking to Phoenix. Orion and I were discussing a math problem. Suddenly, a strong gaze fell on me. I knew it was Zephyr. Since I transferred to Class 3, he has been peeking at me like a pervert. On the day of the physical fitness test, I had such a bad period pain that I couldn't straighten my back. Orion carried me to the infirmary, and he immediately rushed over to try to snatch me away. It was Phoenix who brought people to stop him. Zephyr also tried to ask friends in the circle to make peace with me. But after knowing what absurd things he had done, no one was willing to help him anymore. Falling out with a childhood friend who is closely tied to one's interests for a poor student. This is not what a wise heir should do. Zephyr's emotions are too unstable. And instability means risk. So those friends in the circle gradually distanced themselves from him. After a while, Orion was called away by the teacher. I stayed where I was alone. Zephyr suddenly walked up behind me, and there seemed to be something suppressed in his voice. It revealed a deep sense of unwillingness. Is it because of him? You've been seduced by Orion, so you can't wait to leave me? I stared at him fixedly, and suddenly felt extremely bored. How could a person be so shameless? It was him who indulged Zephyr to provoke and insult me. And now it was also him who came to question and blame me for changing my heart. I was really tired of this game of chasing back and forth. Zephyr. Have I never told you? A glimmer of light flashed in Zephyr's eyes. What? Under his expectant gaze, I said word by word. The thing I regret the most in my life is getting to know you. You really disgust me to the extreme now. After saying that, I didn't look at him again and turned around to get in the car. Zephyr's face turned pale, and he stood there stunned for a long time without moving. The sun stretched his lonely figure very long. It was completely out of place with the lively surroundings. The childhood sweetheart of the past ultimately became strangers. After having a great time going out to play for a day, I threw myself into the intense review again. The study group of 4, consisting of me, Orion, Sylvia, and Phoenix, was officially established. The days of studying every day were hard, but also fulfilling. This was a kind of happiness that I had never experienced when I was with Zephyr and the others. At this moment, I wasn't the daughter of the Serena family. I was just Serena, striving only for my own future. During the meal, my parents tentatively asked, "Darling, if you think it's too hard, we can study abroad. We've already discussed it with Orion's parents. Orion will go with you at that time, so we can feel more at ease." My parents knew that I had broken up with Zephyr some time ago. He came to my house looking for me when he was drunk. He happened to run into Orion having dinner at our house. Zephyr was so angry that he almost went crazy, and with red eyes, he was about to fight with Orion. In the end, it was my father who called someone to drive him out. I shook my head. No, Orion and I both think that domestic universities are very good, and there's no need to go abroad. In terms of studying abroad, Orion and I had the same idea. There were many top-notch universities in the country, so why go far away when there were good options nearby? Of course, if we want to pursue further studies in the future, it's not too late to go abroad. My parents looked at me with pride and kept putting food into my bowl. You're truly Mom's good dear. You're so great. Eat more. Look how thin you are. Mom feels so heartbroken. And Dad feels so sorry for you too. This is wild hazel mushrooms that I specifically asked Uncle Zhang to get from our hometown. They taste extremely delicious. There are still some in the kitchen. You can take them to Orion and the others later. Looking at my parents with loving eyes, my eyes became a bit moist. In my previous life, when my mom saw my body in the mortuary, she went crazy on the spot. My dad's hair turned white overnight, as if he had aged 10 years. Fortunately, hadn't fulfilledly, there is still a chance to start over. I composed myself and grinned at them. Mom and Dad, I love you so much. My mom gave me a glare of feigned anger. Pooh, Pooh. Pooh. What's with all this talk of death? It's so inauspicious. Quick. Spit 3 times. I smiled and hugged her arm, acting sly. Suddenly, my phone rang. I picked it up and saw that it was an unfamiliar number. After answering it, an anxious voice came through. Hello? Is this Sister Serena? Zephyr had a car accident while racing and is now in the hospital being rescued. He kept calling your name when he was unconscious. Can you save him? I kind of regretted answering this call. It was really unlucky to hear about Zephyr at this warm and sweet moment. I sneered and threw back the words he had once said to me. No. I'm just his neighbor. If you want to save his life, call the doctor. Don't bother me. In the hospital. Listening to the busy tone on the phone, the boy's face looked rather unpleasant. Zephyr. Sister Serena said she's just your neighbor. Told you not to bother her. And then hung up the phone. Zephyr was originally standing there in a daze, not understanding what had happened. He clearly had planned to be the first to visit Serena at the cemetery, just like in previous years. The next second, he was in the hospital. But upon hearing Serena's name, he didn't care about anything else. Immediately jumped out of bed, grabbed the boy by the collar, and asked, "Did you say Sister Serena is Serena? Is she still alive?" What exactly were her words just now? The boy was almost scared to tears. She said she's just your neighbor. Told you to call the doctor if you want to save your life. And not to bother her. Zephyr's face lit up with ecstasy. And he ripped out the IV drip. He rushed out like crazy. He didn't know if this counted as a miracle. But his Serena in this life was indeed still alive. He couldn't wait to see her. However, he bumped into Zephyr, who had rushed over anxiously. With red eyes, she hugged Zephyr tightly. "Zephyr. You scared me to death. Fortunately, having felt you're okay. Otherwise, I wouldn't be able to live either. You have no idea how worried I was when I heard about you." Zephyr pushed her away forcefully. His eyes full of disgust. Zephyr stood there stunned, even forgetting to wipe away her tears. "Zephyr. What's wrong with you? Why are you looking at me like this?" Zephyr looked at Zephyr's innocent little face. He now hated her as much as he had once liked her. If it hadn't been for her instigating on his birthday, saying that Serena was deliberately trying to attract his attention and force him to yield, how could he have left Serena alone and let her suffer such a disaster? It turned out that the Zephyr in that world had already made his life a living hell. This one won't get away either. Zephyr looked at the bloodthirsty look in Zephyr's eyes and couldn't help but tremble all over. She could only watch him leave helplessly, not even daring to stop him. In the villa area, Orion and I were taking a leisurely walk, looking at the tall and handsome boy with sharp features beside me. I couldn't help but think of the day when I first talked to him. He usually seemed so reserved, yet he actually liked little rabbits. Seeing me grinning stupidly, the corners of Orion's lips curved into a small smile. "What are you laughing about? You seem so happy." I deliberately crossed my arms and gave him a sidelong glance. "TSK, petting so filled wine session. TSK. I never expected that the renowned Orion from No. 1 middle school would actually like a little rabbit cane." Orion raised his eyebrows. "What? Can't I like little rabbits?" Ignoring me, he stopped in his tracks. Actually, I'm also born in the year of the rabbit. Just like Zephyr. I saw when you gave him a gift that day. But he didn't have as good taste as me. He mistook fish eyes for pearls and lost the real gem." Orion looked at me gently. His dark eyes clear and bright. In the reflection of his pupils, I clearly saw my face turn slightly red. I instinctively covered my burning cheeks and awkwardly averted my gaze. I left Orion behind and walked straight ahead. Instantly, heading fulfilledly. A muffled laugh from the boy came from behind. I was so annoyed and embarrassed that I wanted to turn around and scold him. But someone took my hand. Orion had somehow caught up with me. "Don't be angry, little meatball." I got anxious. "You're the meatball." Orion deliberately teased me. "Why not? Auntie said you were chubby and fair when you were a kid. Just like the little meatball in a steamed bun." What a guy Orion is. He used to look so aloof. But who would have thought he could be so playful in private? I was so angry that I reached out to pinch him. Orion immediately surrendered and pleaded for mercy. The two of us returned home, while joking and playing around. Unexpectedly, we saw Zephyr. I didn't know how long he had been standing at the door, and the tip of his nose was a bit red from the cold. When Zephyr saw our hands holding each other, a hint of viciousness flashed in his eyes. Then he quickly returned to normal and stared at me intently. "Serena, I finally see you again." I rolled my eyes, feeling extremely speechless. I had already made things clear to him last time. Why was he still lingering around? I said impatiently for him to leave quickly. But Zephyr seemed not to have heard me and walked towards me with red eyes. His eyes were filled with grief. "Sorry, Serena. I'm late." Looking at the tenderness in his eyes, it had never belonged to me. My heart skipped a beat. Could it be that he was also reborn? However, it didn't matter to me. Whether in the past life or this life, Zephyr had never been kind to me even a bit. So what if he came back? I simply didn't care. Seeing my displeased expression, Orion quietly stepped in front of me. "What do you want with Serena, Zephyr?" A fierce look flashed in Zephyr's eyes. "This is between me and Serena. It has nothing to do with you. If you know what's good for you, get lost." Orion sneered. "Serena is my girlfriend. It's you who should get lost." Seeing that Zephyr was about to go crazy again, I led Orion into the house and slammed the door shut. Zephyr looked at the closed door, his heart taking. He solemnly promised me through the door, "Serena, don't worry. This time, I won't let anyone hurt you." I rolled my eyes when I heard that. He's crazy. Do I need you to protect me? If I were to rely on you, I would have been reincarnated by now. However, this time's effort seemed to be serious. First, he went back to school and dealt with those who had bullied me in the class before. Especially that Jocelyn, who was so scared that she didn't come to school for several days. Then he dumped Zephyr in a high-profile manner. According to the information Sylvia had gathered, that morning Zephyr had bought breakfast for Zephyr as usual. She even wanted to feed him personally as if showing off a treasure. Zephyr immediately lost his temper and threw the greasy breakfast in her face. He told her not to bring such pig slop to him again. Then he broke up with Zephyr. Zephyr was stunned on the spot, with grease all over her face, looking extremely ridiculous. She cried and hugged Zephyr's leg, asking him why he was breaking up with her. Unfortunately, having fulfilled me, Zephyr didn't show any mercy and kicked her away. Originally, Zephyr had wanted to ask Zephyr's bunch of cronies to intercede for her. But they had never thought highly of Zephyr from the beginning to the end. They had called her Zephyr before only because of Zephyr's sake. They scolded her harshly in disgust and then drove her away. Without my help and Zephyr's support, Zephyr was isolated again. On this day, having fulfilled my obsession, when I came back from the office with Sylvia, I saw that Jocelyn had blocked a girl in the toilet with several other people. I frowned and burst in. But I found that the one being bullied was Zephyr. At this moment, she reeked of an unpleasant smell, and her wet hair was stuck to her face. Her pale and peeling lips had several small cracks. Her face was swollen and red from being slapped. Zephyr immediately looked up and cried out for me to save her. "Serena, save me." They slapped me several times and even forced me to drink water from the toilet. "Please, save me quickly. Please intercede for me with Zephyr." "No, no. Intercede for me with Zephyr. I'll never dare to make you angry again. You saved me once, so you can save me a second time. Right? Zephyr loves you so much. He will definitely listen to you. Please. I don't want to die here." Jocelyn looked at me with some fear and said, "Sister Serena, Zephyr told us to do this." I nodded and didn't say anything. I turned away from Zephyr's desperate gaze. I'm not some kind-hearted saint. Ever since Zephyr came back, she had targeted Zephyr. I had already guessed that she was somehow involved in my death in the previous life. Since that was the case, why should I stop it? This was all her retribution. Time passed quickly. Soon, had out a low sigh. The day of the oath-taking rally arrived. I sat together with Orion listening to the principal's mobilization speech. Zephyr was looking at me not far away, his eyes full of bitterness. During this period, he hasn't given up. He has almost done all the things that I once did for him. He made cakes and gifts with his own hands. He bought the limited edition Legos that I like. He prepared a fireworks show for me. He even knelt down on one knee in front of all the teachers and students in the school and said he loved me. When I did these things myself in the past, I didn't feel anything. But now, as the one being pursued, I really think Zephyr is annoying and childish. Orion was also extremely jealous. He directly confronted Zephyr. The two of them were constantly trying to outdo each other in different ways. Just when Zephyr showed his love for me in a high-profile manner again, I was finally extremely annoyed. I directly pulled Orion over and kissed him. Zephyr was stunned on the spot, and he seemed to be on the verge of falling apart. However, I didn't care about his feelings. As long as I could make him stop, I would achieve my goal. After the oath-taking meeting ended, I made an appointment with Orion and the others to have a meal together. The exam was coming soon, and the most important thing now was to adjust my mentality well. So we decided to have a good feast. Unexpectedly, as soon as we left the school gate, a white car suddenly rushed towards us recklessly. Zephyr, who was tortured beyond recognition, was sitting in the car. There was full of resentment and venom in her eyes. "Serena, you've ruined my life and stolen my lover. I want you to go to hell with me." "Ahahaha. Go to hell, you bitch." Just when the car was about to hit us, a black car suddenly rushed out from the side and crashed directly into the white car. The white car was smashed to pieces, and went out of control and drove into the building. Zephyr, who was sitting in the driver's seat, spat out blood foam and died on the spot. Until the moment of her death, she couldn't close her eyes. And Zephyr was also taken away by the police. He didn't look at me even once from beginning to end. After the incident of the car attack, the school strength and security, Orion stayed by my side all the time. On the day when the exam was completely over, I received a letter from the detention center. It was a letter written to me by Zephyr. In the letter, he mentioned a lot of our childhood anecdotes. Whether it was playing hide and seek in the deserted garden and getting spanked by the parents, or secretly drinking red wine at the adults' birthday banquets and getting dead drunk, there was nostalgia between the lines. Finally, having fulfilled my anxiety, he apologized to me and asked for my forgiveness. After reading the letter, I was silent for a long time. Then I burned the letter with a sense of relief. He tried to kill me once, but also saved my life once. In this life and the past life, our grudges are cleared. I don't talk about forgiveness, nor do I talk about hatred. I just hope that we will never see each other again for the rest of our lives. Extra chapter, from Zephyr's perspective. Zephyr has a secret. He really likes the newly moved in couple next door. They are very kind and benevolent. Unlike his home, which is cold and he is the only one there. Every time the couple stroked his head, "Zephyr, what are you saying? You're even picking on the gift made by our little princess Serena with her own hands. Over there." But soon he knew. They couldn't. Because they already had a lovely daughter. She was chubby and white, just like a plump glutinous rice ball. He was jealous of her. But when the little girl softly called him brother, he couldn't help but like her. But his father said that in a family like theirs, they couldn't show their liking so obviously. So he put on a stern face towards her. But she wasn't angry. Instead, she smiled sweetly. Just like this. A long time passed. They all grew up. His father started to mention the girl frequently. There were calculations between the lines. He forced him to marry the girl. He said that it was all benefits and no harm to the Liu family. But he didn't want to listen to his father anymore. His father didn't deserve to be his father. And he had no right to interfere in his marriage. He wanted to resist and break free from the shackles of the family on him. But he was powerless. So he could only vent his anger on the girl. He ignored her and indulged others to bully her. He forced her to stop liking him. Later, he really succeeded. But he also regretted it. The girl who loved him was finally lost by him. For the rest of his life, he was afraid that he could only meet her in his dreams.